In today's video, we're going to learn how to do apples like this. So to take an apple that's a very simple drawing like this and people color it in, they're like, oh, I drew an apple. Or something like this, and then they're like, oh, it has a shadow, I need to add a shadow. We're going to learn how to draw one very realistically using colored pencils and then using another medium of baby oil to make it all nice and smooth. So let's get started. We're going to need pencil, colored pencils, some type of sharpener for your colored pencils, and an eraser, and of course your piece of paper to go. So let's get started. To start with, lightly draw the shape of your apple. So if you have an apple in front of you, that will help. But start with a circle shape and then bring it down more because it's not a perfect circle. But what we also want to do is bring it up and around here, and then a little bit narrower at the bottom for where it would be sitting. And if you see where it comes up and down and around, then go ahead and draw that. I'm going to make this a little bit narrower for my apple that I have. And the stem, I'm going to bring down here from the view I have of the apple. So this is that part where the stem's dipping into it, and I'm having the stem come over here and it gets a little bit wider on top, so I'm going to draw an oval, and then it gets narrower towards that part. You can add a little bit of curve if you want to. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take the eraser and go over it, so I just barely have any pencil, but I still have my guidelines. And if you're doing watercolor, this is also what you would want to do, so you're not having that pencil line show up quite as much. So to get started, I'm going to start layering colors on there. So for apples, it has many layers of colors depending on which apple especially, but what we're going to do is a red apple, and it's kind of, I think it's maybe like a gala or a pink apple, but it has a little bit of yellow in it. So it's looking yellower here on the apple, and then it goes down into more of it like an orange and the red and stuff here. So I'm going to start and I'm going to follow that contour of how it's coming up and out of that center part of the apple. I'm not going straight across because this will make your picture look flat. So curving it up, so I'm going to go up, and don't be pressing down really hard because we're going to add layers here. And if you start with a really hard layer, then you can't build layers up on top. So it's that straight part right there, kind of like a little smile. It's going up and around the stem. I notice I'm not coloring the stem in. And now I'm going to curve up and over this way and go over more to follow that curved part of the apple. And we'll be adding other colors in this because you're like, apples, you said you were doing a red apple. It has other colors in it. If you were doing a Granny Smith apple, you would definitely have yellow in it and greens. And I've even seen where it has the reds in them still too. And then there's the yellow apples. I always like those too. Now I'm going to curve around. I'm on the very top. And I'm going to follow, and I'm using not just the pointy part of my pencil, I'm using more the side, and that's why I'm not holding it right here. I'm holding it back further so I have where I can move it easier and get those curves going. What I'm going to do is also leave a little bit of an opening here. So I kind of just did this oval blob looking shape. Put another one here, and those will be adding in. You'll find out later, but don't color them in. And then we'll get some more going down around the side just a little bit, and we'll be adding colors back in. So all this is yellow right now. Now what I'm going to do is with the lighter green, this one's called jade green. If you have a lime green, like a celery green, depending on how big your colored pencil set is. But what I'm going to do is just go in here and put just a little bit, and I'm going to start curving up and around on that yellow. And if it's somewhere that white was still of the paper, that's fine also. And notice I'm not right down here because that's harder pressure. We want some loose pressure on the pencil. And I'm just going to go back and forth, light, but going back and forth just so it's building up layers. Get that little curved part up here. Bring some just down around the edge just a little bit. And this is what's going to add the body in for the pencil. And if you have a lime green, you could go ahead and put some in there. You have several greens and yellows, you can put them in there too. What I'm also going to do is grab a very light brown that I have. So if you only have regular brown, don't be pressing down as hard. And we're just going to lightly go over where our stem detail was. And make a couple lines there in the inside. And I'm going to follow that little smile line that we made. And then I'm just going to put a few pencil lines of the brown coming up and out of here also. And then what you're going to do is we're going to start adding some color to it that's more going towards the red side. So we're not going with red right away. We're going to add some orange to it because it's going to have a layer of the orange, and then we're working to those reds. So if you have regular orange, that's fine. If you have a red orange, you could work towards that also. You could do a little combo of it if you have them. So regular orange, what we're going to do is go over this area, but now we're going to add more to the whole body of the apple. So I'm going to start going in. And when we layer the yellow on top, it's going to turn it to be that yellow orange. That green, if we put the orange and red on top, it's going to make it look darker in those spots. Because orange is how red and yellow make it up. But green, if we would look at the color wheel, so green and red are opposites on the color wheel. So when you mix these two, you want something darker for, say, a shadow even, you could put green in your red and it will help make it darker too. And we'll get to mixing those in a little bit. I'm going to go back around, up and over. And I'm just going to put curve. We're going and following the curve. And you're like, apples are orange. What, is she crazy? Well, it has a base of orange. So the next time you're eating an apple, look at all the different layers that they have. And I'm doing this all very lightly. Now remember, don't color in those spots that we did earlier. Following that curve. So I'm going to go this way, but now what I'm going to do is also come down this way. And I'm using the side of my pencil again. Going right up underneath those little ovals I made. And now I'm going to work at the bottom of this. Back to the top. And I'm just going back and forth and putting different layers on top of the orange that I was doing too. I'm keeping some of these open and you'll see why. Using the side of my pencil. Now if you have your red orange, I'm just going to go and put some more in there, here and there. And I'm not going over all the orange I did, just different areas of it. A little bit lighter in those open areas still of this color. I'm trying to keep a crisp edge at the bottom here and the sides. Get some up in here again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my red. If you have a couple of different reds, that's good. If you have a warm red, like what I was using here, works. If you have regular red, if you have a red violet, that would be good to also have. It's going to add, say, like a cherry red. Those would be good reds to also have. If you have, like here, this one's called magenta. That will add a little bit of color to it too. But I'm going to go in like what I was doing with my red orange, just a little bit more. What I'm going to do now is pull out the regular red. And I'm just going to go over, but lightly. So I'm using the side of my pencil again. Then I want some of the red down here. Let's draw our little smile in more because we've kind of lost it. Now I'm going to pull some red up out of here too. So we start adding layers. And if you have an apple to set in front of you, this would be a lot of help to you to see how those colors come up out of there. And you can always go touch things back up if you're like, I lost a little bit of that brown in there, I want it back. So I'm following the curve of the apple, or the contour of it. Touch this back up. Get some of the curve and contour of it right here. And I'm going over it again and again, and that way it's building up. I'm not just pressing really hard the first time. And it does get a little bit straighter here. I still have that curve going. I'm lightly going to color over those. Here you can start adding a little bit heavier pressure if you want to get those curves going in. And I'm going to put one here. different brands of colored pencils work different ways because of how the lead part of the pencil is put in there. Some are softer, some are harder. The different types of paper make a difference when you're doing this also. This is just regular drawing paper, which is 80 pound, 80 weight paper. So it has a little bit of thickness to it. If you had something that had more of a tooth, it would definitely be going on there different than if you had a really slick piece of paper. And what you can also do is build up watercolors the same way if you would ever want to do watercolors of apples. And you would have to layer them and let them dry in between. Going to go back and put a little bit of that yellow right back in here just to get a little bit warmer. Then my red orange, I'm just going to put some more color in there. Looking kind of flat in the center, so that's why I'm putting more layers of colors in. If you have, say, I believe it's like a red delicious apple, it does have more purple tones to it also, some of them, so you would want to put more purple into it than what I'm doing here. This apple is a warmer looking apple because it has the more of the reds and yellows and oranges to it instead of the reds, darker reds. Now what I want to do is just keep layering, and I like going back in here and just really putting more layers of that red in there to get that deep tone of the apple so this would look complete. Whereas right now it's just looking kind of like, well, they started something but it just looks off just a little bit. So we're going to add more and more layers to it, and that's what colored pencil blending is about, is the layers that you add to everything. Pulling some in from the center and back out again. And like I was saying, if you had some magenta, you could put some in through here. And I'm just doing it down towards the bottom. You could even do a little bit of that red purple if you had that. And I do like having other reds on hand, other colors, and that way it's sharpened so I didn't have to stop in the middle of something to get those nice crisp edges going back. So I'm just putting some of those lines because when you look at apples, sometimes you can see those lines in the apple. But then they blend into something else. If you have a raspberry color, this will help with the shadows that I'm going to show you too. But if you don't, red purple would work good. Let's put some color back on top of this. Not so much orange showing up now. What I'm going to do is just go back and put a little bit more yellow up in this. I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow in the stem right now too, just to give it an extra layer. Put a little bit more yellow this way. This way we're getting those highlights added to everything too again. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is down here on our bottom, get the nice crisp edge of our apple still. I'm going to put in just a little bit of a shadow because we have our highlight here. So we're not going to have like a super big shadow, we'll have a small one. And I'm just going to do this in red first, just so you can see where it's going from. So it's the bottom part. And then from there, what I'm thinking about doing is grabbing this mauvish magenta color. You could use purple if you have purple. I'm just going to put a little bit of a shadow in right here and blend it. And from all of that, you can add in a blue on top of it if that's what you have. But I'm just going to follow this curve to start adding some shading to this. And from here, if you don't have those, you could just even go straight to your purple color that we have. And there went my lead. Technical difficulties, right? And when we're looking at that, think of the shadows here, so we're wanting to put it to build up around the bottom of it too, because it would be blocking the light source. So back to that, go up in that area. So now I'm just going to take the pencil and get that curve going. Want it on the bottom of the apple. Just like if you watch the pumpkin drawings that I've done, you'll want the pumpkin, it had that curve at the bottom, so does the apple, so would other objects that you would be doing. Then I'm just going to go back. This is where we're just going to keep layering our colors. Step away from it. Where do you think it needs a little bit more of a color added? I'm going to go back and put some more red on top. That way it blends in even more. If you have a blender stick or something, you could use those right now. You could also be using a tissue if you have that. So what I mean by that is you could take your tissue and then just move it around, and it helps blend things. It will be coming off, but it helps. Some people like using those. And I'm just going to go back with the red some more. Put some more red down here. And looking at this, you're like, well, we still haven't worked on this all the way. So what I'm going to do is still go back, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of this red orange that I have and put up around the highlight. It just wasn't having enough of the pencil itself around there. It looked kind of empty on the paper because it didn't have all the layers built up around it. So I'm just going to keep adding some more layers up around this. It's like we were forgetting to work around it just a little bit. Here and there, you may be like, okay, we need some more of this area. You could go back in and add a little bit of the yellow to get a warmer tone now that we did something cool, get some warm back in the picture. You could even put some down around in this area just to give it some of that body. So from this area, what we would be then working towards is we're going to take our brown that we have, and you could have just the light brown, you could have a regular brown with it, and we have this golden color added in. So what I'm going to do first is just go with the direction that this is going lightly, and then a little bit up on that oval that we had, just a little bit more, and I'm just building layers like what we did with the apple. So now I'm going to go in with the regular brown, and you can see how it's adding more definition to it. So just a little bit here. And you could curve around, which would be that part of the stem also. Work down here because it's a little bit darker down here. Get a darker part of that part of the stem there. You want to add some yellow back into there, you could, some more of a lighter brown. Trying to keep a highlight on it though is what I'm working towards. So don't fully color it all brown because we have highlights going here. If you ever need to, because you get too much, you can always pull some out with your eraser still. If you're feeling your colored pencils have too much on it and it's not working to where you can layer more, you can always take your eraser and take some of that extra wax buildup that the colored pencils have. So just a little bit more. We could add some more brown in there if you wanted to. Just a little bit more of a shadow going. You could even put some in here. Just here and there. This way it's getting some of that body going towards the curve, the top, the crown part of the apple. Then I'm going to go back with this red orange. If you have poppy orange or something, poppy red. Go back with your yellow. Brighten that brown up. If you're like, I'm losing my brown, put lighter colors next to it. It works on that contrast of light and dark. Find a regular red, go back over this. Touched up so it's a nice crisp apple. We went a little bit over here, so I'm going to just try and erase. About building some of those layers, so I'm putting some of that magenta color back in. If you don't have that, you can even do pink in there, especially around this like lighter highlight area. I can put some pink in here. So it's apples. If some of you say draw an apple, then everybody just goes straight red. It looks flat. By this, we're giving it all that dimension and everything. So you can pull your purple back out if you have to give yourself more of a shadow. You could use your blue purple if you have that. Just kind of add some more colors in here. I'm even going to get some of that brown since we had brown. Let's put a little bit of brown towards the bottom. And notice I'm not going to black to add a straight shadow at it because it's just not that. We have the reflection of the red down here. And I'm just going to put a little bit more red on top, using the side of the pencil again. So it's not flat looking. Color very lightly with yellow if you want. I'm gonna then go lightly over this color. I'm gonna blend it just a little bit there, just so it's not so textured looking from the pencil laying on it. And then I left just, and it's hard to see, so I'm just gonna pull back out with my eraser just a little bit just a little bit of a highlight here too that we could work to. So I'm just gonna touch up around it so it makes it pop out. And then there was a little bit more of one there. So what I'm also gonna do is, this is to me just not showing up quite as well yet, so I'm going to take that green where I was talking about and put it in here for the shadow, and it will help make that apple pop out just because it's the complementary color of red. Go back up to red. And notice I'm doing this all with no black in my palette that I have going on. Get that little shape of the apple bottom going here. You could even pull a little bit of it up through here if you wanted to. And then if you wanted, you could go back and just put a little bit here and there. With that lighter green I have. Just about adding a few colors here and there. And step back, like what else does it need? So in this, just because it needs just a tad bit crisper, I'm just going to go through with my white here. And just go over it so it gets that same glossy effect that everything else was giving. Little area that we had here. It's not showing up that much, but we had a little one right here. You could go back and add a few more. And then looking at it, I think we need just a little bit more brown right towards the bottom of the stem right in here. Just a little bit of that shadow effect to go in. Could even add that darker green if you have that on it too. Help, because the stem was green at one time. So just add a little bit of cream to make things pop out. And then go back with your red right around the edge of it. Curve, 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 curve to the contour of the apple. And then go back in with the lighter brown again. Just so that green's not popping out so much. And then if you think you're done, you're completed, but what I would do is just a little bit more red here and there. And there we have it. So now we have drawn out an apple using all of our colored pencils, and it's not just a solid apple to where it is something like this, which would be more elementary, or even to where it is the typical apple that people do, and then you're like, well, oh, an apple needs shadow, and then you have that heavy black shadow. So this is what we worked towards. Apple here is completed, but if you want to go into something even further, what you can do, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so you guys can see the true details that's going on with this. So I have a little bit of baby oil here and grabbed just some Q-tips, and you could do this with a paintbrush, but I like the Q-tips a little bit just because it has more of a material part on it than the bristles. So what I'm going to do, and it's just very, very little, I'm going to take this and I'm going to rub it on and go in the contours, and you always go from like the lighter to the darker, and it will be blending them just a little bit more. So you want to follow the contour of this. And if you have something light and then you've touched something dark, you may not want to go back if you don't want it to be blended. You'll want to just get a different Q-tip for each color. then I'm just going to blend back and forth here. And what this does is it's just one of those extra things you can do. You want to make sure you do have thicker paper when doing this, but it blends the colored pencils in a different way than what your blending stub would do, or even a tissue. So I'm not wanting to go around this and up and down because it will get it all muddy. So I'm just going over it, and then I'm going to go around it again. And you can see it's pulling up off of the Q-tip here, and it goes very long way, so you don't need to keep drowning it because your paper is going to start absorbing it also. So follow the contour here, and I haven't done the stem yet. I want to go back at the end and do it. So around here, and it just gives it another texture. When you do this though, you want to make sure it's, sets by itself and it dries, because it does have oil in it, so it could go on to other artwork. So you need to be careful about that, especially if you have, say, all these in a sketchbook. Keep things in between them. So I've followed the contour and it's gotten all blended and smooth here. Now I'm going to go towards that stem, fill it in. Another thing that I've done before is if you have Vaseline, you could dip your pencil into, and I just do a little container like this too, dip the tip of the pencil in it, and it colors different, and then you want a tissue to keep wiping it off because it makes the lead of your pencil soft at that time. So it's something you don't want to keep on your pencil leads for a very long time. And then I'm just going to do that little bit of the shadow here. So here would be, and then I'll just pull a little bit of it upwards. Then you can go back and put a little bit of that shadow in the stem if you want. So there you have is our apple, and then if you wanted, you could do several others, yellow ones, red ones, that are a different red, where they have more pinks, the more purple, the darker reds. So it's up to you. So thank you for watching.